Hello everyone, Rob Guest from football.london here and welcome to the latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me today, it's Lee Wilmot. Lee, how are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you, my friend. Not too bad at all. Filling in today because the legend that is Alistair Gold is not here with us, as people who are regulars to the football.london website will know by now. He is out in not so sunny Australia, following Ange and the team for this, how should we describe it? Crazy end of season friendly with Newcastle tomorrow morning. I'm filling in for him today, but we should have loads of content from Ali over the next couple of days while he's out in Australia. I suppose we could probably start there. I've called it crazy. It is a bit weird for a Premier League team to go out to Australia 2 days after the season finishes, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I think we've seen it before. I think the most notable example was probably Chelsea 5 years ago. They had a postseason game against New England Revolution in the United States, and Ruben Loftus-Cheek got I think it was ruptured his Achilles tendon. It was out for months and months. I think it was literally about 13 months after his injury when he made his comeback, just because of the coronavirus pandemic, what stopped football for 3 months in the country. I think it's a game what's coming for an awful lot of criticism, and I'm sure that will only get louder if someone potentially does pick up an injury, especially with the Euros and the Copa America just around the corner. But I'm sure it might be a thing more and more clubs look to do in the future.
I was just going to say, you could kind of understand it if it was a summer without anything going on. But in an international summer, when the players have got to go on international duty for the Euros and the Copa America, as you say, and then there's the pre-season tour pretty much soon after that finishes, and then you get back into the Premier League season. Very strange, but I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. And I don't want to be criticised for not asking you how you are as well, because I know Alistair always gets criticised for not responding to that. So I hope you're all right, Guesty. Is everything okay with you?
It is. There's quite a bit to talk about today. We're going to start with the 3-0 win against Sheffield United and then move on to, as we said, that game in Australia. But we'll start with the 3-0 win at Bramall Lane. Tottenham went into the game in South Yorkshire just needing a point to, wrap up 5th place in the Premier League table and the Europa League berth that comes with it. And they did just that. They were given a bit of a scare inside the first 10 minutes or so, because Sheffield United did have a couple of good openings through Ben Brereton Diaz, but once Dejan Kulusevski scored, it was just, pretty much all one way, and Spurs probably on another day could have won by more than the 3 goals.
Yeah, full disclosure to the viewers and listeners out there, I didn't watch the game on Sunday. Probably one of the only games this season that I haven't seen of Spurs, actually, but given I am the head of the site and there was something else going on in North London that was quite important, I felt I should be watching what was going on in the title race on Sunday rather than my beloved Spurs. I haven't seen the full game. I've seen the highlights, obviously, and Dejan Kulusevski scoring a double obviously brings up the question of why he's not been used in that central role before the season, doesn't it?
100%. I think Ange sprung a bit of a surprise in terms of his team. I think everyone was probably expecting Son to line up through the middle as
That's 2 games in a row, isn't it? Because Pap Sarr was playing pretty much through the middle of the previous game against Man City.
Yeah, he was. But, prior to that, Son's been, the main man in the central role over the past 2 months, with Richarlison missing quite a lot of football recently through injury. But no, Ange decided Dejan Kulusevski would instead start through the middle, and it just made sense, really. Someone who's, quite a big presence up there, is powerful, he can hold the ball up. And lo and behold, he went and scored 2 goals, troubled Sheffield United throughout. And I think everyone was probably thinking, why on earth haven't we seen him there in these, past 5 or 6 games when Tottenham have been battling for a place in the Champions League? Because when Son's played there, that's not that side of his game, trying to hold it up, bring other players in. He's better coming from the left and making things happen. And Son looks much more like his old self out on the left wing against Sheffield United, and did have a big impact on proceedings But when you look at the final Premier League table and only 2 points separating Aston Villa and Spurs, I think a lot of fans were probably left wondering, why hasn't Ange trialled this before? Because it was certainly worth a gamble given Tottenham's struggles in the final third in the recent games.
He's someone that I've, even when he's not been at his best, and I've been quite critical of him in the last few weeks of the season because I don't think Kulusevski was showing anywhere near what he is capable of showing. He's always one of those that when you look at kind of a team lineup and trying to decide who should be playing in those front three positions, he's always one that I think, well, he's a strong lad. He can hold the ball up and he can get at players as well. He's not afraid to kind of stop and hold the ball up, but he's also not afraid to go beyond and get to the byline sort of thing as well. So it does beg the question of why we haven't thought about it before. There might be viewers and listeners who are going to prove me wrong and say, I've been calling for this for a long time. But I don't feel like there's been that much clamour for Kulusevski to be the one to play through the middle when Spurs have been kind of struggling for goals and struggling for results, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we've seen him there a couple of times this season, probably towards the end of games. Luton Town away is the one that sticks out in my memory because Spurs were down to 10 men following Yves Bissouma's red card and they needed someone, up front just to try and make the ball stick. And yeah, it certainly worked on Sunday against Sheffield United. And I think a lot have probably said recently that the lack of a real out-and-out striker has been a huge miss for Spurs. And you can probably look at Alejo Valise's loan spell at Sevilla and you probably just question him, like, why have you sent him there? Because he's barely played. I think he's played about 28 minutes across 5 appearances. And, I mean, you never know what's going to happen in football. Not many probably would have predicted all these injuries to hit Spurs and that. And Valise, if he stayed, probably would have been given that game time and offered more of a focal point up front for Spurs. But yeah, good to see Kulusevski in the role. Whether or not we see him in the position again next season, we'll have to wait and see. I think everyone will be hoping that Harry Kane's long-term successor comes to the club in the summer because Tottenham do need to sign, a new striker who can, get them 15, 20 plus goals a season. But I think if, come the 24-25 campaign, if Tottenham are going to be short in those attacking areas, then at least, Postecoglou does have an option there in Kulusevski to tent and, might see him there in tomorrow's friendly against Newcastle.
I was just going to say that. I think we probably will see him there in tomorrow's friendly, won't we? That I think the first goal he scored was a real striker's goal, wasn't it? It was it did remind me a little bit of Harry Kane, the way he got the ball and just kind of took the quick shot that Wes Foderingham clearly wasn't expecting, and precision in off the far post. It was very much a Harry Kane finish. So there is that option there. But I think I've written in a couple of pieces around the transfer window that we've done on football.london already. I think everyone knows we need to sign a striker in the summer. I think that's one of the kind of highest priorities for Ange Postecoglou, Johan Lang and Spurs. And there's no guarantees over what's going to happen with Richarlison this summer, is there? There's lots of rumours about Saudi coming in and being interested in him. And then you look at this season and think Spurs needed someone else anyway. You can't just rely on one striker. We've relied on Harry Kane solely pretty much for far too long, didn't we? Not being able to find the kind of a number two that will happily sit on the bench and then come and make an impact off the bench when needed. Richarlison looked like he was going to be that player. Didn't have the best first season when he came to the club. Has had injuries this season that have kind of curtailed his ability to show what he's really about, because I think when he's been on the pitch, I think he's been excellent this season. But you do look at it and think Spurs do need a second. So if he were to leave, you're looking at potentially going in and looking for 2 strikers if Alejo Valise isn't if Ange doesn't think Alejo Valise is ready or is going to be capable of being in the first team, then you're looking at 2 signings potentially in that position.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you what you're saying about Richarlison. I think when he has played, the team have probably played better and looked better just because he offers that focal point and that run of form he was on from probably early December to the middle of February. I think he went into games knowing he was going to score he was just in that sort of form, and it's just unfortunate, really. Again, it's just been a bit of a stop-start season for him in terms of injuries, especially towards the end of this campaign. And yeah, I think all will be hoping, if he is still at the club, that he can get a consistent run and, playing those 38 games. But, if a move to Saudi Arabia potentially does come to fruition amid all the rumours, then yeah, I think Tottenham are going to be looking at 2 strikers, because if they have the lofty ambitions like Ange Postecoglou does, where he wants them challenging towards the top of the Premier League, then they need strikers who are going to guarantee them the goals to make sure they're there.
Yeah, it's interesting with Veliz, I think, really, isn't it? Because you sometimes find when you go on loan, Sevilla have had a poor season in La Liga, haven't they, really? And I think sometimes managers, when you're struggling in that situation, they're reluctant to use loan players to try and get them out of it. I think he's fallen on a bit of a hard time with Sevilla struggling in that league, that he hasn't had more opportunities, probably because of that the managers just doesn't want to use someone outside of the group, essentially, which seems weird to say when you're struggling. Try and mix it up, try and do things a bit differently, but you do quite often see that, don't you? That they're reluctant to use other players when they're in that situation.
Yeah, I think looking at the reports from the Spanish media, it sounds like he was, not the manager's signing. Where have we heard that before?
Yeah.
I think it's Victor Orta, is it? Who
Yep,
was at Leeds?
right.
He's at Sevilla now. That he brought in Veliz, Hannibal from Manchester United as well, and they barely played. I think it probably is one of these. It's Quique Sanchez Flores, the manager. Maybe they're not my signings. I'm not playing them. But I mean, when you looked at it in January, it just seemed, a great move for all parties, because Sevilla needed someone to score the goals to move them away from the relegation zone. And unfortunately, it's just not happened for the player. I mean, there are never any guarantees anyway when you send someone out on loan. We've seen it multiple times. Dane Scarlett didn't enjoy the best of seasons in the first few months of this campaign at Ipswich. Jack Clark previously had some, terrible loan deals as well. So there are no guarantees, but I think Kulusevski, can potentially give Ange and Spurs an option there next season.
Yeah, I think so. Just on transfers, the transfer window opens in the middle of June. Obviously, clubs will be looking to balance the books with the financials due at the end of June. We know Ange got some business done early last summer, and I think a lot of clubs will be looking to get business done early. How do you see the first couple of weeks of the transfer? Obviously, we're looking at transfer rumours right now. Now the season's over, kind of attention already turns to transfers and what's going to happen over the summer. What's your kind of gut feeling of the first couple of weeks of the transfer window?
I think everyone in an ideal world wants players to come in through the door early, but I think what maybe complicates things this year is the major tournaments, what are going on, what will make, potential deals hard to get over the line, especially if a player is playing in Germany at the Euros, or, I think it's in America, the United States, where the Copa America is being held this year. But yeah, I think last year it was quite a few deals in June, early July, and then it was Van der Ven, Ashley Phillips, early August. Yeah, I think we'll have to wait and see how it pans out, but in an ideal world, you want those players in before the pre-season tours of Japan and, South Korea, because that's good for the incoming players, to mix with the players currently at the club, and then, just get used to Ange's demands.
Do you think it could be more a case of perhaps a few leaving early on in the window rather than a few coming in?
Maybe, but I think we've said over the past few years, yes, Spurs will get rid of this player, and it doesn't quite happen. Look, Tanguy Ndombele's been at the club, going on 5 years now. Last 2.5 years he's been out on loan. Sergio Reguilon as well spent time out on loan. Permanent moves not come to fruition, so it's not as easy as saying, these players will definitely move on. We'll just have to wait and see.
It's not as easy when you've got when you've got someone like Daniel Levy either, who will try and get as much money as possible and therefore will wait as long as possible for people to panic and spend a bit more money as the transfer window goes on, potentially.
Yeah, you want the best deal for the club at the end of the day. But I think in terms of what Ange wants to achieve, there's got to be a lot of movement this summer in terms of incomings and outgoings, and fingers crossed we'll start seeing Spurs making some early moves.
Well, I think I said that at the very beginning of the season when we had the kind of the unbeaten run of the first 10 games of the season. I think I said on one of the podcasts that I didn't feel that Spurs had the strength and depth to continue at that pace and challenge for the title, and it's proven to be the case. I think we all dreamed and we all hoped, but I think when injuries kicked in and when suspensions kicked in, we saw that there's still more to be done under Postecoglou in the transfer window, and I think he knew that and he knows that now, and he's got plenty of. I'm sure there's plenty of things going on behind the scenes, plenty of plans being made for the transfer window. So yeah, just back. That was a little bit of a tangent there. Apologies. Just back on the Sheffield United game. Heung-min Son back on form. Perhaps no surprise to supporters, given that he's been pushed out to the left, where many see him in his best position out there. That he's back on form then, and we've spoken about James Maddison in the past few weeks as well, kind of getting back to what we saw at the beginning of the season as well. And I think you've said that you were at the game on Sunday. I think you said he was excellent on Sunday as well.
Yeah, it was very impressive. I think probably the past few games he's looked more like his old self, and the season probably just coming to an end for him at the wrong time, given the form he's getting into at the moment after struggling for a few months. But maybe that bodes well for England and Gareth Southgate if he is confirmed in the squad when it's announced at 2 p.m. Today. We'll have to wait and see. But I thought, yeah, Maddison influenced things in the final third, had a role to play in Kulusevski's first goal, teed him up for the second one. Probably should have had one himself in the first half when I think it was Son who played him through, took it in, and then just good save from Foderingham from close range. But that was more like it from James Maddison, and I'd say it was more like it from Son as well. He was incredibly unlucky not to score. Powerful volley, what Foderingham saved in the first half. And then he was key to the second and third goals. The second one, just a really quick swivel of the hips to get the better of Jayden Bogle. He's put it across the area that, in the end, it's almost a Mickey van der Ven net when the ball hit him and ricocheted towards the far post, and then Pedro Porro's on hand to put it in. And then Son as well for Dejan Kulusevski's second. Absolutely incredible ball with the outside of his right foot to send James Maddison free down the touchline. Then Maddison and Kulusevski teamed up for the third goal. So, yeah, certainly positives to take from both performances. And also thought Pedro Porro was impressive because he was so good.
What a hit that was for the goal.
Unbelievable. We've seen him do that a few times this season. It was literally like a carbon copy of the Burnley goal, like 8 days previous. He can strike a ball, can Porro. Definitely. It's Porro, I thought, was probably Spurs' best player, or certainly one of the best players in the first 6 months of the campaign. But his performances, have slightly gone downhill a bit. Still done well, but not to those levels he was producing earlier in the season. But yeah, he just looked more like his old self.
How was he defensively? Admittedly, against a limited opposition in Sheffield United, I think that's the one thing that the one criticism there's been in the kind of the second half of the season is that, yes, we know he's good going forward and we know he can play Ange's system exceptionally well, but has he got that capability in defensive situations?
Well, I think he's proved this season that he is a good defender. So everyone had questions over him coming into the summer, especially with him playing right wing back for the majority of his career, and then having to adapt to playing as a right back. But I think he's done really well defensively against Sheffield United. Didn't really have too much to do. As I said, the Blades gave Spurs a couple of scares early on. it was a poor header from Radu Dragusin that allowed Ben Osborne to play in Ben Brereton Diaz, and he blazed over in the area when he maybe should have hit the target. And then Diaz then hit the post from a Gus Hamer cross that came from Porro's side. But other than that, Porro and the defence didn't really have too much to do, because once Spurs went ahead, they were in total control.
Good. It's good to hear, and it's good to see, given the number of goals that the team have conceded again this season, obviously. And yeah, I think you're right on Maddison, Son as well, to an extent. The season is probably ending at the wrong time for them, just coming back into a little bit of form. But I do wonder, with Son and kind of being forced to play that central role, and the impact of the Asian Cup this season, just how it hampered him, I think, during the season, because he was excellent in the first half of the season. And you look at his stats for the season as a whole, they're still pretty good, considering a lot of people look at it and think, well, he's not been great since the turn of the year. So it shows you what he did do in the kind of the first half of the season, really. So yeah, I'm sure we'll see much better from the two of them next season. Most of the team, most of the squad, I think, with Ange having a second pre-season and his second full season, we all know what it's like in kind of first seasons with Ange Postecoglou, and perhaps it's gone a bit better than a lot of us. Well, certainly the first half of the season was a lot better than a lot of us expected in his first campaign.
Yeah, very much so. I think if you flip the results around from the start of the season to the end of the season, I think many probably would have expected Spurs to start poorly and finish strongly, but it's happened the other way around. But I think there's a lot of positives to take from this season. You know, rewind the clock back 12 months ago, Spurs didn't qualify for Europe. They're back in the Europa League. They finished 2 points behind Aston Villa. Were very close to qualifying for the Champions League, and I think you can look back at a number of games where they should have picked up more points and maybe got themselves in there. And the form in the final few games certainly didn't help the cause, but I think Ange is the right man for the job. I think they're really going to go forward. They've got to take so much from this season. It will certainly be a benefit. They'll have a good pre-season and just let's kick on from there.
It's changing perspectives and changing expectations, isn't it? When you have that run of 10 games at the beginning of the season, everyone starts thinking, "Oh, this team's good. This team's here to stay, and Champions League is odds on." And then when you peter away a little bit, you get to the end of the season, and people think, "Well, it's disappointing from Spurs, isn't it? Finishing fifth." When if you look back to the start of the season, losing Harry Kane the day before the season started, the all-time top scorer. I know people don't want to talk about him, but the all-time top scorer for the club, the talisman, he'd been there, kind of the go-to man for years, and you lose him. And you've got a new manager in who doesn't know the league. Fifth place, I'm quite happy with fifth place. I'm not sure what we would have seen next season in the Premier League and the Champions League, given the kind of the impact that has on a squad in playing that elite level competition. And no disrespect to the Europa League. Obviously, I think it's a good competition. It will be a great competition to win next year if we can. I think that just puts added pressure and added expectation on Ange Postecoglou and his team for, like, in the second season, if you're in the Premier League and trying to do what he wants to do in the Premier League and then trying to battle in the Champions League as well. It might actually be a blessing to spend a season in the Europa League.
Yeah, I mean, you probably look at the fixtures and there are going to be some good teams in the Europa League. I think like Real Sociedad, Athletic Bilbao, Roma, some of the teams already confirmed to be in there. But you're not going to be facing teams as strong as you would be in the Champions League. And that's going to allow Ange to maybe give some of the players on the periphery of the team a go and give them more minutes. So I think it's a good competition, Europa League. There's been some really good ties over the past few years, especially when you get to the knockout phase. Tottenham going to be, one of the favourites to go far in the competition, and then what they need is to certainly bolster the squad because they didn't have Europe this season just gone. But I think they are in a good place, to attack the Premier League and the Europa League, and they'll only benefit from having a year under Ange.
Just quickly on the Europa League, away from Spurs, who are you backing on Wednesday, Leverkusen or Atalanta? It's been an incredible season for Leverkusen.
I think it'll be Leverkusen. The way they're going, I mean, even if they're losing late on, they'll somehow find a way to get a goal. Because this unbeaten run that isn't, they just don't seem like they're going to lose at all in any game. If they play like they have been all season, they'll fancy the chances. But I mean, don't write off Atalanta. They've had a good year in Serie A. Picks up a really, really good win at Liverpool when I think a lot were expecting, Jurgen Klopp's side to go all the way in the competition, given it was his final year at the club. But no, I think it'll be Bayer Leverkusen who get their hands on the trophy.
Yeah, just before we move on to Newcastle, just I know you wanted to speak about Radu Dragusin and Mickey van der Ven again on Sunday. Van der Ven playing at left back again. Another good showing from him, and kind of Radu Dragusin just kind of coming into his own finally after kind of having to sit in the shadows a little bit. Again, another who perhaps doesn't want the season to end.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the case for Dragusin, because he's gone from being an ever-present in the Genoa 11 to being in and out and really having to make do with limited minutes in the Tottenham shirt. I thought it was really, really good against Man City last week, and followed it up with another strong showing against Sheffield United. Bit of a poor header early on that presented Ben Brereton Diaz with a chance, but after that he was relatively solid. And I think what was notable towards the end of the first half, Sheffield United actually had a long throw, Jack Robinson over the ball, and an awful lot's been said this season about Tottenham set pieces, Guglielmo Vicario not being strong enough. You could see him pushing. I think the defender was Austin Trusty. Give him a couple of pushes, actually pushed into the ground at one point. And then Dragusin came in, basically the bodyguard for Vicario, just stood in front of him, gave Trusty a few pushes. Sheffield United fans weren't having it at all, and then just give him one big push. He stumbled, went flying for a few yards, and I think Tottenham fans had picked up on it. That's what Spurs need in front of Vicario, to give him the protection, just a no-nonsense defender who's not going to take anything from the opponents. And yeah, he was really, really good. Again, you'd imagine he's going to start against Newcastle. What'll be his third successive start, and I suppose next season it's just a question of whether he can break up that partnership of Romero and Van der Ven, because Destiny Udogi's going to be fit come August. He's going to be playing at left back, so that'll mean Mickey van der Ven more than likely will be in the left-sided centre-back role where he's excelled this season. But with the Europa League games on the agenda, there's going to be chances there for Dragusin, and if he can, perform really, really well in those, then maybe he's going to be a starter. But I think what probably Angel see it as is Romero and Van der Ven aren't his guaranteed starters. He's three really, really good defenders at the club. No one's guaranteed the place. They're all fighting for it. And if it is to be Dragusin and Romero, or I don't know, Dragusin and Van der Ven, Tottenham have a couple of really, really good centre-backs there.
He did win best haircut in the Spurs Alternative Awards this week, though, which is an absolutely wrong. No way should a man bun be winning best haircut. But perhaps I'm showing my age a little bit there. Just a couple of moments I just wanted to ask you about. That obviously little videos that have gone viral, I suppose, on social media from the match. While you have a coughing fit. Heung-min Son obviously went down in the box, and a red card was shown towards the end of the match. And there is a video of Son going over to the referee and pretty much saying, no, it shouldn't be a red card, essentially. How did you view that one? Did you see that in the stadium, or was it just a case of waiting and waiting for the VAR?
I think you could only really see him go down because it was like, quite a lot of players in the same area. And then watching it on VAR, from what it looked like giving him a bit of a dig in the stomach. I don't know if that's what everyone else saw, but that's what it looked like. And, for the referee to give him a red card and then go to the screen and not give him one when he did look like he made contact with him was a bit strange. That I'm not actually sure what happened. I don't know if there's
we shouldn't question that
really
when
good angle.
We shouldn't question that when James Maddison wasn't red carded against Nottingham Forest, though, should we?
True. Yeah. Can remember that one. But no, what did you make of that?
Yeah, I thought just thought it was it's very difficult to see what happened when you're looking at the replays. He kind of, I wasn't sure if he'd had his foot stamped on or something like that and just went down. And yeah, I just found it interesting that he appeared to go over to the referee and tell him before he went over to the screen it's not a red card. And then the referee then obviously went and made that decision. So the other one I was going to bring up was Christian Romero on his old friend Emerson Royale. Emerson, I think, went down a couple of times in the match, didn't he? And there's one video that's going around, which you have to watch the video for a little while, but where Emerson's lying on the floor and he's got concerned teammates coming up around him and finding out what's going on. And then after a while, Christian Romero comes into shot and kicks him while he's on the floor a couple of times, as if to say, "Come on, get up." What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, I only saw that yesterday when you sent us that video, but that's just typical Christian Romero, really. And yeah, that all came from Emerson had come on in the closing stages and got hold of the ball. Obviously, must have fancied his chances, ran upfield with it, produced a couple of step overs, then got a bit of a, I think, knock on the ankle. Wasn't much to it at all. So I think Romero probably had the same thoughts and just wanted him to get back up. But yeah, I think that probably summed both players up, let's be honest.
Is there nothing to be concerned, given what happened in the Man City game between the pair of them? Obviously, did you not think there's anything to be concerned about between the two of them there?
No, nothing at all. You know, I think Ange said it after the Liverpool game. It's cost the both
Liverpool, sorry, not Man City.
Yeah. It's cost the both care. What happens on the pitch, stays on the pitch. And I'm sure everyone forgot about it straight away. It's just one of these things. They care, they want to win, they want what's best for the club.
Nice one. Before we move on, do you want to tell us about the benefits of NordVPN?
Yes, of course. If you're not aware by now, the Gold Guest Talk Tottenham podcast is sponsored by NordVPN, and you can use the service in a host of different ways to enhance your internet experience. NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world, and that means there's no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favourite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. You can use Nord to set your device to thinking it's back in the UK and just watch them as normal. Not only that, but the outlay on the NordVPN subscription is cheaper for you in the long run, and that's because you can purchase streaming services in other countries at much cheaper rates. So, for example, you can change your virtual location to Australia, where Ali is, enjoying himself right now.
He's probably using it right now.
Yeah, you might be. And you can book flights from Australia or any other country you want to book flights from. And also, security-wise, it's a great system for pretty much going as far as you possibly can to stop people stealing things off your device if you're connected to a public Wi-Fi. Such a clever app that you can install on any device that you've got, quite frankly, and it's very easy to set up and you can get straight on and going with it. There's a whole host of benefits from signing up to NordVPN, so why not give it a go? To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and you'll help support our podcast. The link is in the episode description box.
I reckon he would have finished open training, gone out for a bite to eat, and he's probably back in the hotel room using
watching
NordVPN.
Neighbours.
Watching. I was going to say Netflix, but I don't think you can get that on get Neighbours on Netflix. But I'm sure he is using it to stream. We know he loves his TV and his movies, doesn't he? So in his downtime, he's probably using it.
Yeah, I'm sure NordVPN's come in very handy for him in Australia for these, 48 hours, 72 hours?
Yeah, he'll be back very soon. Yeah, he's got tomorrow's game, and I think he's flying back home on Thursday. Yeah,
I think he's back Friday, so he's literally like whistle-stop tour.
It's been a mad couple of weeks for him, actually, hasn't it? He went out to Sweden to see Lucas Bergvall, and then came back for the Man City game, and then back out to Melbourne now, and then he'll be back. Looking forward to some UK time before he then goes on the tour, which has been confirmed now, hasn't it? All confirmed, Japan and South Korea for Spurs.
It has. So another game against Bayern Munich, one in South Korea, one at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which will be a bit of a homecoming for Harry Kane and Eric Dyer. But yeah, just on the subject of Lucas Bergvall, I don't think we discussed him in the previous pod because Ali was still here. Or no, he was in his hotel room in Stockholm.
Yes, that's right.
And he'd not gone and done the interview. But yeah, done a really, really good interview with Lucas Bergvall, what's on the football.london website. So make sure you check it out.
It's those. I think when you go out and when you're journalists and you get the chance to do these kind of interviews and these trips, it's those little details and little things that you get in the stories. Like Ali wrote, Lucas Bergvall, when he came up to Ali, he'd obviously been told that there's an interviewer from England coming over to speak to him about Tottenham. And he had those little bits of detail of Ali saying that Lucas Bergvall came over to him with a smile on his face and saying, "I'm happy to do this. I need to practice my English." And then the little moment when they finish the interview where he pats Ali on the back and says, "See you next season, looking forward to it." So it's those kind of details and those kind of bits that you don't get to see as a fan that we can bring you when we go out and do these things. And I find it quite interesting just how players are when it's kind of not someone looking over, not someone from the club looking over you and making sure you say the right things and do the right things, etc., etc. They can just be themselves a little bit.
Yeah, very much so. I think that's what you want as well when you're interviewing players, for them to open up. And it's a really good interview. Sounds like he had a good game as well. So an ideal trip. You don't want to go and he's injured and he's not playing, really. But yeah, like I said, just go on the football.london website. It's there. I think there's some interviews coming as well with some others high up at Joe Garden and some, I think, who played a key role in Bergvall's development. So I think there's still some more to come from Ali's trip to Sweden.
Yeah, there is one that I've read today. It's going out this afternoon. That's Tuesday afternoon if you're listening to it, or if it's up. The story will be up on Tuesday afternoon with Djurgården sporting director Boss Anderson, just giving an insight into what it's like dealing with Daniel Levy over a transfer negotiation. So yeah, very interesting to read what he has to say there. Obviously, yeah, we kind of had a brief chat at the very beginning about the Newcastle friendly. Alistair is out there at the moment. 10:45 our time tomorrow, kickoff. Bit mental that Spurs are out there. As we've already said, don't quite get it myself, but there's commercial and marketing reasons for doing stuff like this, and we'll never know just the financial impact this will have on the club. So I suppose we shouldn't really criticise it if the club's making money from it. But a couple of players left out of the squad, but a really strong squad taken out there for this game. Just talk us through that, Guesty.
Yeah, no Christian Romero. Andrew's been speaking to the media in Australia today. At his press conference, he's confirmed Romero's had to go home, fly back to Argentina for personal reasons, and then there's no Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. That's injury related. He had a bit of an injury going into the Sheffield United game, kind of touch and go, but he's pulled up sore after the game, and I think they felt that best for all concerned, not for Højbjerg to travel if he's carrying an issue, because especially when Denmark have got a Euro 2024 campaign coming up, 3-4 weeks time, Højbjerg wants to be playing in that, and the last thing you want to do if you're carrying an issue is be involved in this Newcastle game and pick up an injury that rules you out of the summer. So yeah, no Giovanni Lo Celso as well. I think he had a bit of a knee issue going into the Sheffield United game. I asked Ange after the game about Lo Celso. He said he was training and then they'd make pretty much a late decision on him if he could make the trip or not. And no Lo Celso in the end. So 24-man party, quite a strongish squad really, with the players who are available in terms of the first team. Number of youngsters included as well. Some of the youngsters include George Abbott, Rio Kyron Matton, Leo Black, Jamie Donnelly, Iago Santiago as well. Alfie Devine and Ashley Phillips are back from their Plymouth Argyle loan spells. Due to the terms of, the loan deals, they couldn't play for Spurs in the Premier League because their registrations with Plymouth until the end of June. But they played for the under-21s the other day in the Premier League 2 playoffs, and they're part of the squad in Australia. And I think both of those will be looking to make an impact. Devine I thought it was really, really good when he played in Australia last summer against West Ham. Phillips actually hasn't played under Postecoglou yet at all because he signed early August. I think he was on the bench for the friendly against Barcelona at the Olympic Stadium. in Barcelona, didn't come on. He's been on the bench a number of times for Spurs this season. I think it was about 8 times before he eventually moved to Plymouth on loan in January. And yeah, he's not had a game under Postecoglou so far. So I think with no Romero, a lack of options at left back, you'd be thinking perfect opportunity for Ashley Phillips, pretty much an audition maybe ahead of the 24-25 season, because you don't know whether he's going to be part of Ange's plans for the season or he's going to be allowed out on loan again to, help aid his development.
It seems like so long ago, doesn't it, that people were kind of not clamouring, but talking about him potentially being given a start in the Premier League because of Van der Ven's injury, Romero suspension. Eric Dyer wasn't in the plans of Ange Postecoglou, although he did come in for that Chelsea game, obviously, and a few inches away from scoring an amazing goal, obviously, in that Chelsea game. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see Ashley Phillips, because Ange clearly didn't think he was ready to be thrown in at that point, and the subsequent loan to Plymouth shows that he wasn't ready for that first team step up. But yeah, it's a chance for him, the Newcastle game and pre-season as a whole, to show what he can do to the manager, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. Whether or not he starts, I don't know. I don't know how Ange will go with this team, whether he'll go strongest 11 or bit of a mix and match. But, looking at the 24 players who have made the trip, there's a number of them who've been on the periphery this season. You'd be hoping last game of the season give them, some opportunities there in the team. Brandon Austin, Alfie Whiteman haven't really played in goal because Vicario's been an ever-present. Dane Scarlett could do with some more minutes. Brian Hill, Emerson, Oliver Skip. There's a number of players who'll be looking, to get minutes in the tank tomorrow at the MCG, and Phillips will be one of them. I think he's had a decent loan spell at Plymouth. I think he came away with their Young Player of the Year award, even though he was only there for 6 months. Yeah, he drops out of the team on a couple of occasions towards the end, but he was back in for the final 2 games when, Plymouth needed the results to stay in the Championship. So he's more than played his part in, keeping Plymouth in the Championship for next season, and he'll just be looking to kick on next season and, just building on what was a good loan spell at Home Park.
It's interesting. We don't know what's gone on behind the scenes, of course. There might have been conversations between players and management, but the players that have been left behind are for club, apart from Romero, which is a personal reason. Lo Celso, Højbjerg left behind by the club because they've got injuries. You might expect a game at the end of the season for a few more players to go and say, do you know what, I'm carrying a little bit of I don't fancy this because I want to go on holiday before the Euros or before the Copa America, etc., etc. But those conversations might have been had. They just might have been told by Spurs, absolutely not, you're coming with us. This is a commercial opportunity. You have to be there.
Yeah, I think the worry for a lot of the players, especially those who are going to be having Euro 2024 or Copa America commitments, is picking up an injury. And, if you're going into the game thinking you're going to get injured, even it all, then probably are going to get injured. Say if you're not going in, fully blooded into challenges. And like you said, there was that really bad example with Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who spent pretty much 13 months on the sideline following a post-season friendly. And yeah, that's the last thing Ange and Spurs will be wanting from this game is injuries, because in theory, the season is done. We've done 38 Premier League games now, and we've got this post-season friendly, what has come in for a lot of criticism from quite a lot of people, because he's just one of these, isn't it, really? I think a lot of clubs might be looking to do it in the future, just commercial reasons. But let's be honest, I don't think the players really are going to want to be there, are they?
No, it's one of those. One of those key arguments in football. Always, you get people on one side and people on the other of, do footballers get tired? You've got one side of the argument where people go, oh, they only kick a football around for 90 minutes a week. How can they be tired? Blah blah blah. And then you've got others on the other side of the fence going, well, they're kind of, their bodies are machines these days. The way they put through it, they've got training 4 or 5 times a week rather than what it used to be like twice a week. They are solely focused on playing football, and of course they get tired. And the people with that argument when you're putting post-season friendlies in and you're putting pre-season tours in, as well as international tournaments over the summer, if the players are going to get really tired, it's ridiculous the amount of football that they have to play these days, really, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. I think years gone by, you had a look at the football calendar and it'd be, Euros one summer, World Cup 2 years later, and you'd have, a free summer every other year. But that's not the case now. Literally every summer, there's something. It'll be UEFA Nations League, maybe in 2025. Then you got the World Cup in 2026. They just don't seem to have a break. A number of them, when they have played in tournaments, it's literally 3 weeks off and then back to it straight again. They just don't really seem to have a break. And it's going to be a Club World Cup in a couple of years? What's going to be quite a size as well? There is an awful lot of football for them, and just trying to put in another postseason friendlies, and probably not the greatest of ideas, especially when you're flying all the way around the world to play it as well.
For all those that are going to go in the comments and go, "Oh my goodness, woe is me, woe is me," I do understand they are very well paid for the privileges of playing football. So don't at me for for saying they might get tired. Before we round off this week's podcast, I suppose we want to talk about Ryan Sessegnon. His contract has ended, or ends this summer, and the club have not taken up the option to extend it by a year. So he will be leaving the club this summer, which personally I think is a real shame. Such a promising young player. So much potential. Lots was expected of him when he moved from Fulham to Spurs. There were loads of different clubs in the market for him. And it just hasn't quite worked out for him, has it? A variety of reasons. Pochettino obviously leaving not long after he joined. The number of different managers that, let's say, defensive managers that we then had after that, and then injuries have beset him. What do you make of it?
Like you said, I think it's a real shame for Ryan Sessegnon, because injuries have just totally hampered his time at the football club. I think he's had 5 seasons, really. Had a year out on loan with Hoffenheim, but it's literally been so stop-start for him. Ever since he moved to Spurs, it's, they've really basically killed his Tottenham career. And this season, I think it's about 7 minutes he played in the Burnley game in the FA Cup. Then, having had surgery on one of his hamstrings in the summer and making sure that was right to get back, there was then another setback, I think, in the middle of February, where he's had to undergo surgery on the other hamstring. And he's just had rotten luck, really, when he's been at Tottenham. Signed by Mauricio Pochettino, arrived with an injury. Pochettino gets sacked. Jose Mourinho comes in, plays under him a bit, goes on loan to Hoffenheim. Then it was Nuno and Antonio Conte. I think he got a bit of a decent run in the team under Conte when they qualified for the Champions League. But ever since then, it's just been injury after injury, and just trying to find how many games he's played for Spurs. 57 in total across probably 4 full seasons at Spurs. It's not great, but I think he said himself after the surgery on the left hamstring, that's pretty much right now. He's in a good position. Hopefully he'll have no issues with that, and fingers crossed it's the case with the surgery on the right hamstring, and he can go on and have a good career somewhere else. But I mean, he's 24 years of age now.
I was just going to say, he's only just turned 24.
He seems like he's been around for years and years.
Well, he has, yeah. Well, he burst onto the scene with Fulham, like 15, 16, didn't he?
Yeah, he was superb for them in the Championship, played a major role for them in, returning to the Premier League. Didn't have the best of seasons in the Premier League with Fulham, but I think a move was always going to come about. There was a lot of interest in his services, and it was Spurs who won the race for his signature. And like I said, unfortunately, it's just not worked out for him through injuries. For me, I think it's the right decision for both parties to go the separate ways. I think Spurs are a point now where they're overhauling the squad. Ange wants to take the club forward, and yeah, it's just unfortunate for Sessegnon, but I think there will be clubs interested in his services, and
Absolutely.
if he can, get himself back fully fit, can get a consistent run of games under his belt, just like Japet Tanganga's done at Millwall second half of this season, then he can go on and have a good career, because he's 24, still got so much left to offer, and I'm sure there'll be a number of clubs looking at signing him.
Yeah, I think it can be interesting for Spurs as well in terms of those wide areas. If you look at Perisic having played a kind of a key role off the bench at the very beginning of the season, Sessegnon going as well now. Manor Solomon, question marks over what he's going to. Sorry, I'm talking about Perisic from last year, aren't I? Solomon and what he can, whether he's going to stick around or not. That's three wide players that are kind of potentially gone from the squad.
Yeah, Brian Hill as well. You'd imagine he's going to go this summer. Richarlison can play out wide. Question marks over what will happen with him. So you're looking at what Spurs need to do in the transfer window. Certainly number 6 position, new striker, winger as well, most definitely. Yeah, especially when you're going to be playing in the Europa League. 8 group games this year compared to the previous 6. If you're going through quarters, semi-finals, final, I don't know if there's a round of 16. If there is, potentially 7 games. I'm not sure what the exact format is from the knockout stages, given everything's changing in the Champions League and Europa League from next season. But yeah, Spurs certainly need the numbers, and you've got to be looking at the wide areas.
Yeah, I think so. It's going to be an interesting summer, not just for Spurs, but I think lots of clubs in the Premier League. But yeah, certainly a few. I think Spurs fans will be expecting a few new signings in a few different areas of the pitch.
Yeah, very much so. I think a positive first season under Ange, certainly more to come, and hopefully Spurs will be kicking on with some new signings in tow as well. So, right, I think we'll leave that there for today's latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham. I imagine it'll be next week when we're back. I can't imagine Ali wanting to do pod on Friday when he's jet lagged. But yeah, we'll be back next week. We'll have a look back at the Newcastle friendly and have a bit more of a wrap around the 23-24 season, because there's plenty to discuss about it. So in the meantime, thank you for listening, and just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and it'll help support our podcast. The link is in the episode description box.